I started.
All right, good evening, everybody. This is Thursday, August 26th, and this is the subcommittee meeting of the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee. We will go ahead and start the meeting. We don't necessarily have any formal public comment period. We do have a couple attendees, so if there's any thing you would like to say, just please wait till the end of the meeting. We'll provide an opportunity to say anything. And we are recording this meeting, so if you don't want to be recorded, then don't stay in the meeting, but we will go from there. And thank you. I'm gonna hand it off to you, Ken, to get us started.
Okay, it's awfully easy to get off in the weeds talking about other things. And I think we want to stay focused on what we've been asked to accomplish by the commissioners. And that is, does Ridwell's request for an exemption rise to the level that there should be an exemption granted for this activity, or for Ridwell specifically? So I will wade in because I think that we have processes in place to accomplish either incorporating a company like Ridwell into our system or not. But I don't think we want, as a matter of governance, to create an exemption for anything actually that allows somebody to pretty much go off and do whatever they want. It's hard to put guardrails on exemptions unless we have people applying and letting us know what's going on. We already nicked the haulers 3% off the top to fund staff and ourselves. So I think our response to the county commissioners to simply be that, we do not think this warrants an exemption, and that they should take a more normal path and approach the legislative body, that's the county commissioners, to create a hole for them, or to create a set of criteria that brings them in compliance with the regional solid waste advisory. The Metro's regional solid waste plan. Which I don't think this fits into. This is sort of somebody attempting to carve out a niche for themselves. And our goal is to report and to work for the county commissioners. And I think it's a disruptive and unfortunate approach to business. And I also know that in other cases, in other jurisdictions, Ridwell has essentially taken this stance when asked to stop and told that they're not playing according to the rules, essentially up yours, and not a response that I find endearing. So, having said that, Vinod, Sandra, have at it.
Well, I think, Ken, too, sorry, Sandra, I see you're talking, you're still on mute, but I'll give you an opportunity here. You watched the last two meetings, right? So you were able to catch up on the conversation.
I did watch both meetings in their entirety. Yes.
Yeah. And so the real outcome that the whole committee needs to arrive at is a decision on whether or not the committee feels that the practice of collecting hard to recycle materials is necessary to the implementation of the regional waste plan. So you spoke to that there, but so that's really the heart of the question here. And I know when Metro came in, we talked with Rosalind, and we kind of funneled in on action 12.5. Kathy sent some information out to you three about action 12.5. So that can be part of this conversation too. I want to hear what you have to say, Sandra, and then also you, Vinod, based on what Ken just said. But also thinking as we think through this meeting and get through this discussion, let's think about how the committee wants to arrive at a recommendation, or how we want to share information with the larger committee, and how we want to kind of move forward on that discussion and conversation. So I'll just kind of frame it like that in response to what you're saying, Ken, and I appreciate you kicking us off. And Sandra, I saw you unmute and you're ready to go ahead.
Ken, what cities did you find that they violated things? Because I would like to research that. I haven't seen any negativity about Ridwell. This exemption is not just for Ridwell, but it's for the haulers and everyone. So it's not just Ridwell. I think you're maybe a little not sure about that. Or,
I believe that Clackamas did send them a letter and they're following up with them. And I think Gresham, I don't know what Gresham action took, but I'm fairly certain about the Clackamas one. Tom, do you know more about that?
they've been operating there for a long time, along with James Recycling.
Yeah, I'm aware that Gresham, my understanding is Gresham has sent a violation letter. I have not seen a copy of it yet. And Clackamas, I don't actually know the status in Clackamas, to be honest. But the city of Hillsborough has received a letter from Ridwell, and I don't think they've officially provided a city response. City of Beaverton is a similar position. So there's this conversation is playing out across the board. But Ken, I think you characterized it somewhat fairly in that Ridwell is claiming that these rules do not necessarily apply to them, so they don't need to request the permission of the cities to do that. They haven't necessarily, they did claim that here. If the materials we early on received and the letter we sent to them, and then they did accept this process as a next step and applied for the exemption. So Washington County right now, based on our rules, we are not considering them a non-compliant player. They're in a gray area. If the recommendation is from the committee is that they don't seek an exemption, then they will be asked to cease their collection service because they would no longer be operating in compliance in a sense. But yeah.
Okay. So I'm just concerned. I don't think that Ridwell or anybody else should be able to operate without some kind of supervision from the county. The reason for having franchises, there's a number of reasons, but the reason is you have to come in, you have to meet certain criteria, and the county can set up, the commissioners can set up any set of criteria they want, including they can declare it to be an exemption, but I don't think it rises to the level that says anybody who wants to toss their hat in the ring can do it. Is it, if we determine that it's an essential service, which is what it would be if we lumped it in with the haulers, then the service has to be provided, and we, as the county government, have to make provisions. And we have provisions in place to have, if somebody suddenly goes out of business or does something catastrophic, other haulers are required to step in and take up the slack, similar to what we've done nationally in the insurance industry and other industries to ensure that continuous service occurs. If this is not I think the Regional West Plan ultimately appears to address the question of everything. Ultimately, we want to know for sure that all waste is being picked up and dealt with in some way. How to get there remains somewhat elusive, but that's where we're headed. And I think that allowing off-the-cuff players to essentially pick and choose what they're going to deal with is not as well planned as we could accomplish.
I could see that if they were going for the essential services, but that's not what they're doing. They're creating a market that we don't currently have. And When It Got Junk has that, there's many other companies doing very similar things, not curbside pickup, but other ways. I mean, if you're going to regulate everything, you're going to have to regulate all the places that take solid waste, which includes Goodwill, thrift stores, things that people want to discard. I mean, do you really want to go that far? I don't know if the Regional Waste Plan, I read 12.5. I don't think they're planning to go that far, but if you are, then I mean, that will come to pass down the close to 2030 or whenever.
I sure agree about Goodwill, but there are a lot of things unfortunate about Goodwill. I mean, I'm sure they do a lot of wonderful things, but they are very, if you look beyond
Goodwill,
the surface.
Habitat, St. Vincent's, they're all the same. They're all thrift stores. They take stuff. They take people's unwanted stuff which I guess is considered solid waste.
Or the collection side that our rules are concerned about though, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Vinod, I can tell you.
So I think fundamentally Ken are on the same page. But as that letter that Luis sent, or the email,
Yeah,
it talks about addressing their goal was to address the unregulated people long term. He mentioned it didn't mention Ridwell, but Ridwell didn't exist when they were putting that together. So you can't name the unnamed. But that's what I took from that. And then a lot of when Rosalind was talking, I mean, just how do you incorporate the equity standards and the consistencies? I just felt like it didn't match the goals that were outlined to us. They're the elements of the regional waste plan. So I mean, that was Ken hit on a lot of things that I had too, and I didn't organize my notes, so I'm kind of I chicken scratch notes, but I mean, those are the things that I noticed. Comprehensive collection programs, regulating the unregulated. Especially the equity elements where you're talking about living wages. And I know that so right now we're going through, we're reasonably regulated. It's been, I know, a sore spot that we're regulated enough historically. But not that I want more, but I know Metro's working on it already. We're having consultants talk with us and meet with us about tightening requirements around it. And so it seems that the intention of that is to have a more regulated and controlled system. It seems odd to then say, well, except in this case, we're just kind of let it go, willy-nilly and hope they're doing what they're doing. I think if I read somewhere, or I was listening to some, I don't know if it was the Metro RWAC or somewhere they're talking about Gresham and other people were talking about subcontracting. So I don't understand why they can't be a subcontract and then they're held to the same standards that the system set these standards for a reason, and they're not getting any lighter. So yeah, I think you want them in the system would be my.
And the conversation about a subcontract would be the phase 2 part of this discussion, really, right?
Okay.
And if the recommendation ultimately is that they are not, the committee does not recommend the board exempts Ridwell, the next part of the question that the committee could work on is, what does the committee recommend the board does to facilitate or to encourage some type of service similar to what Ridwell does? And a subcontract is one of those models that is potential. The haulers have proposed a program proposal as well. So that's another conversation. But we've been advised that we really need to answer the first question before we answer the second question, because if it's open market and then there's all kinds of that has different ramifications, and having a discussion about a program that's in a system that might be open market a determination, we get into challenges associated with businesses sharing their plans if it's going to be a competitive business market and those kinds of issues. So we really need to answer the first question first. And I know it's really hard to focus there because we really want to talk about solutions, but at this point we're really talking about, I think, the applicability of the waste plan to the question at hand.
And I would just
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ken.
No,
if you
go
don't
ahead.
mind, I'm just going to offer one little thing, is that the second half of answering that question is in the broader committee sense, or starting with the subcommittee, either way, it has to be based on findings. So be thinking about what if the finding is section 12.5 of the regional waste plan says this, and we make a finding that it doesn't meet that test or whatever. It's not just that that the larger committee votes one way or another. You still need findings.
Yeah, I would retract my solution portion of it. But yeah, I mean that's basically when like I said, when I was listening to Rosalind, I'm hearing what things they want the system to look like. They just didn't line up with this. That's how I read it. And then Luis's letter, he talks about regulating. Their goal was to regulate the unregulated. So
The 12.5 is too vague. I don't see where it specifically targets Ridwell or a curbside collection company. So
Yeah,
I don't.
it's very
think
broad.
It's too vague. I was hoping the person or the people that worked on this thing and actually wrote that would be here to explain that in more detail, but they're not.
Yeah, we could have that conversation. Luis gave us his recollection in the message I shared with you. We can look for some other individuals that were on that technical work group. I will say that Carl Peters and Kristen Leichner were both on that technical work group. Although Carl does not necessarily have a position pre-established, and I don't know if it would be fair to, I think the Haulers Association has obviously given their position, so we wanted to ask for input. I don't think it would be a representative from the Haulers Association that could help us be very neutral on that. But at the same time, it is information, and we can hear it and learn from it if we think it's necessary. But I don't know.
Was Dan Blue? Was Dan Blue on that too? So I see. I mean, it'd be obviously Kristen and Carl have a position, but it might be their recollection might be valuable.
Yep.
And Dan's around, and maybe we can reach out to Audrey.
Was Audrey on that group too?
It says Kristen, Carl. I don't know who Janine Wilson is, but Audrey O'Brien.
And Audrey might not want to.
No, she might not want to make a stand
because she doesn't want to get in because she works at DQ, and it's I don't know if they want to get in the middle of it.
Yeah, but it might be worth their intent.
Yep.
I think I take that from the RSC. It's all came down to intent kind of thing, and so I still have that stuck in my brain.
And Sandra, your point about 1-800-GUT junk is very valid, and I think what Luis shared with us shows us that that's exactly what 1-800-GUT junk type haulers were the kind of original type of activity that practice was proposed for, and then it was broadened by the Committee on Racial Equity at Metro and further kind of refinement as it went through the process. So yeah.
Is SBC Recycling, is that under a subcontract or something?
Nope. If they're charging for collecting material from households, they're technically violating the system.
Oh yeah,
franchise.
they do it.
And the people on TV Highway.
Is that the mattress recyclers or?
Yeah.
Mattress, computers, they take almost everything.
If they collect them at events or if they collect them for free, that's a different. But if they collect, they do house calls, that could be a violation.
Yeah, if they haul for compensation is sort of.
So if they attend an event and they charge for bringing things, that's not a violation.
No, because they're not going out and collecting it from households. It's different. It's like a depot. It's like if Far West Recycling would charge $5 at their public depot and people brought the stuff to them, that's not hauling for compensation.
And I would shy away from other people are doing things wrong, so we should just make an exemption based on everybody's speed. So why are you writing tickets to me?
Well, this was brought about because there was a complaint filed. And you guys, do you all know who filed the complaint? I do. It was a hauler.
Of course, it was
It
a hauler.
wasn't the public. It wasn't my neighbors or anything.
Well, whose ox is getting gored, Sandra? I mean, of course it'd be a hauler.
Well, how come they aren't filing complaints against these other companies that do pretty much very similar things? It's like they're all ganging up on one group.
Nobody else, even if they are doing it, they're doing it like a one-off. They're not creating routes and subscription services. And I think that's a little bit different. Conceptually,
but still collecting for a fee.
Yeah, two wrongs.
Well, whenever you get into the regulatory environment, you find out that you have to be just incredibly precise about how you slice your rules. And I've got a lot of experience with other aspects of regulation, not related to hauling at all. But if I teach somebody how to do a cross-country flight, that's flight instructing. That's perfectly legal and it's specifically outlined. I mean, left outside the whole realm of air taxi and commercial operations. The gray area comes when I tell some guy who wants to go to San Francisco for business that we can do this as a lesson. We'll teach you cross country on the way, and he gets in the same airplane and flies off. The airplane's not legal for that kind of operation if it was an air taxi, but we do it. It's been around for years, and the FAA works to police it, but it's not one of their central. It's not a major problem, and it's not a central focus. But it is a case where somebody has looked very carefully at the rules and figured out we can slide in here, but not over here, and it's a chaotic kind of thing. Regulating and controlling something is very different. But if you want to have a service that is universal and everybody benefits from the service, in a lot of cases, whether they want it or not, then that typically requires some kind of teeth, some kind of regulation to bring them into the fold and make sure that they're properly insured and properly servicing anybody who is willing to pay the price. And it's not a question of whether or not it's a valuable service or whether or not they can have a viable business doing it. That's not the I don't think that should be the focus. I don't think that's the focus of what we were asked to look into.
But hard to recycle items aren't being regulated at all right now. I can see garbage and the recycle items that are on the list, but these are things that aren't being collected currently, so they aren't being regulated.
How do you propose to expand what is collected?
Well, once it expands, then no one will want to pay to have that picked up if it's expanded to regular curbside that you already paid for.
And Sandra, I would say it is being regulated right now as garbage.
Yep.
It's not being regulated as a recyclable material. So that's kind of the crux of the issue right now. Those materials are, if you look at our guides, and Ridwell points this out, it goes in the garbage bin, unless you want to take it to a depot or a reuse organization or some other place. So it is regulated as garbage. It's just not regulated as recycling. So it is currently in the system, I think is fair to say.
I think it's I think that exemption is the wrong mechanism to bless them. I think that, if they have a service that they think is worth having, that is different than what is currently being provided, they should be encouraged to come. The county should, or the state, or Metro, or somebody should create a set of criteria that says this is a hazardous waste hauler, or this is a current, I don't know what we would name it long term, but
Special material. I mean, they have a recycling registration permits in Clackamas, I think. It's not necessarily a set up like what Ridwell wants. It doesn't allow compensation, but that's a potential for an alternative regulatory model. But again, that's conversation too, right? And I think you're using that as an example, as an alternative to an exemption. So I understand what you're saying, but.
I would just say that it's always an option for the board to change code. The board adopts and sets the code. But as Tom said, the narrow question before this group and the broader group is the practice of collecting hard to recycle materials necessary to the implementation of the regional waste?
Not necessary, right?
Not
It's like a
Yeah.
double negative too. Makes it even more challenging.
Exactly.
I would add just on the regional waste plan, and the intent. My understanding also is that Ridwell is going to have to get licensed by Metro as a solid waste facility, right? That's coming down pretty quickly here, that they need to have their application in. So
Because they have a facility there, yes. They don't
September
have.
they're taking material to a solid waste facility that they're picking up. So I would lean that to the Metro interpretations that, hey, they are handling solid waste. So,
I believe
from-
James Recycling is doing the same thing. All right.
who's doing
James
it?
Recycling is doing the same thing.
Yep. They're in the same, they're caught in the same net.
And they're not operating in Washington County. They've told
No,
us, yeah,
I know that.
we've talked to them.
I don't have a problem with the service, and I like James. He used to come to our location in Beaverton almost every day, so I know them fairly well, acquaintance wise, anyways. But they're approaching it, I think, in a different way. They're looking to how do we operate correctly in the system.
Well, and Vinod, I would say we have also emphatically taken the position that what they're doing is collecting solid waste for compensation, and we've rejected the argument that what they're not collecting solid waste. But the exemption request is a separate question from that. So you're right. Metro has deemed it solid waste too. We've deemed it solid waste. DQ has determined it's solid waste. We emphatically agree with that it is solid waste. But it's not right now a recyclable according to our rules and our system yet.
I just look at that as sort of that when we were talking about the waste plan, the intent of it. It's Metro's waste plan, and their intent is that this is what the end result is. That just, to me, that adds more to the meat that it does. 12.5 was intended to regulate things like that. People getting in. And I'm not promoting more regulation. I'm just saying, well, this is what we have now. I'm all for it less, but I think we have these systems in a place, and we're moving them in a direction for a reason. So.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, since many of us have to leave right at 7, I just wanted to give you fair warning. It's about another 14 minutes. You might want to talk about sort of what path you envision, Ken, in terms of getting back to the bigger committee or continuing on with another discussion here.
Well, I would recommend that first off that we didn't agree, and that secondly that we go back and at least ask that the committee adopt a stance that our finding is that this is not consistent with the goals of the regional waste plan, and that a different approach to qualifying and approving this kind of activity should be undertaken, and it should not be done under a blanket exemption.
One of the things.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, one of the things we talked about was, does the subcommittee want to merely give a report with sort of where everyone stands? Do you want to give an update and then have the whole committee hear more from Metro? Are you ready to move at this point? It's sort of.
We could do the update. We could tell the county commissioners and the whole committee that this proved to be a contentious, irresolvable issue, and we'd like to have the whole committee look at it. Essentially kick the can down the road for another month. But go ahead, Vinod.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that they just being on the GRAC, is that what it? Just being on it would really benefit from that hearing, that presentation. I think that Rosalind did a nice job of consolidating it down into what it is. And not that I want to have more 6 o'clock meetings. Sorry, Kathy, but maybe we go back to them and present it, and if need be, if people are like, hey, well, I don't understand this, or can you do something else? Maybe we can reconvene the subcommittee one more time if there's questions or something that people are like, well, I don't understand. Can maybe you guys dig into this a little bit? Just throw that out.
Are you thinking to do that at the September meeting? So like 2 weeks meeting?
That would be
Yeah.
great. Can we get Rosalind back out for the whole committee?
I think we can get her out. Yeah. She doesn't have any meetings at 6. Her calendar's clear.
It's interesting. I saw that you guys work until 6.
I
got an
do.
email from Jennifer today, and it said her hours. were like
Jennifer
8:30 to
does.
6.
Oh,
She
yeah.
She works till 6:30, but she starts
Yeah.
at like 8:30.
Not me.
So, not me. I start at 7. Materials, just logistically, since I manage the meeting stuff, materials are due the 2nd. The way we could put presentation from Metro. So the whole committee has the benefit of hearing about the regional waste plan. And then subcommittee, something along the lines of subcommittee update, rather than like a vote, or, because I think the whole committee.
Well, we have to have
actually-
findings to vote.
Yeah, so there wouldn't be a vote then, but you could give them an update, maybe. I want to make sure they have enough time to absorb Rosalind's presentation also. I mean,
And we would, if the committee directed staff to draft findings pursuant to a certain outcome, we would work on that and create that for the committee as staff. And I also want to honor Sandra, that I know that she's not on the same page as Ken and Vinod. And so I think it's fair that if we go back to the committee, that we hear from Rosalind, and then maybe there's a report out, and Sandra gets an opportunity to share her thoughts with the rest of the committee as well. I think that's fair for her participation in this.
Oh, I agree completely. Absolutely.
Does that sound reasonable to you, Sandra?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, the goals is to kind of share what we discovered. I don't think
Yeah.
we were coming back with a directive or anything, so.
No, and I think that's right. I think it's worth coming back and sharing what discussion was about, what your findings are, what you think the finding should be, what you think the answer is, and then so we'll talk with Rosalind, and then we can have you guys provide kind of an overview of the conversation and where you kind of landed on it, and then Sandra, you would also obviously get an opportunity to provide an overview of your thoughts on it and what you think the right recommendation should be from the committee. And then at that point, maybe the committee can have a discussion about where the majority of the committee wants to go, and if we can get direction to staff to create findings that could be voted on at the following meeting, that's, I think, a pathway forward. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
I mean,
I'll show up at 6 next time too.
I'll try to too.
So
Staff?
would Rosalind have the same presentation as she gave us a couple, like last time?
We could ask her too, if that's what we think we want. Yeah.
That was,
Or
I don't know, that was kind of, I mean, I learned a lot from it, but it doesn't really focus on what we're discussing. It's just a broad overview of what the regional waste plan.
Yeah.
is
And
about.
I know that Metro is in a challenging position too, in that they don't want to, Rosalind can't show up and argue a position in a sense. She just needs to present the broad overview of the
They
waste plan.
wrote this, someone's got to explain it.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, the way I took it
I
is
don't see a
that
finding, so.
Go ahead, Vinod.
well, I was gonna say that, I mean, the way I took it was, here's what it is. And what do you guys think that means, you know, outside of talking to the, you know, like Luis or Kristen or Carl. But I mean, like I said, Luis's letter, email basically says the goal is to increase the regulated.
Yeah, but it didn't, it said the city and counties do it, and it doesn't say how. I mean, you can still allow other companies to be a part, not just the haulers, and be under some kind of regulations. We can provide an exemption with
Well, and
guardrails, whatever you want to call it.
that's question 2 again, right? I think we could, maybe the committee would like to recommend that the board adopts a program that allows a recycling registration, or like a franchise light, or some other type of layer, or the board could decide that they want to, or the committee could recommend that the haulers do it, or that there's some other approach. So I think there's a lot more we need to do before we can turn something like that on in the system. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's not, I would be very worried about just jumping in on either kind of direction, in a sense, in the regulated system. And I think from our perspective, from the county, from a regulator perspective, now that you regulate it, you are ultimately 100% responsible for it. So now we need to be more certain that it's going to be successful. We need to be certain that the outcomes are going to be beneficial, because if we regulate it, we are endorsing it in a sense.
I think we're getting to the solution portion.
Yes, thank you.
I go there too.
It's so hard not to, honestly, it's almost impossible not to.
So your 3-year work plan doesn't even have 12.5 on it.
That's correct.
This won't even be discussed until 2022, maybe. 12.5 might not even be in the next 3-year work plan. I mean, this is
Correct.
taking forever, where people want this recycling now. They want it's obviously very popular. And it seems like the city and the county are just trying to block any progress from being made.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
when
mean,
it
that's
comes
certainly
down to
not what we're trying to do, but yeah.
Maybe when it comes to actually implementing these regulatory things, then we can crack down on these companies. But until then, I mean, why? I don't know.
Well, I would just say from my staff position, we're trying to stay as neutral as we can be and just to offer assistance. And also, and in no way do I want to like stifle having a future subcommittee meeting. If it ends up, you think it'd be good to come back and talk about something specific, I'm more than happy to coordinate it. It just seemed like maybe we were at the point where we were ready to at least go back to the broader committee, at least with an update. So that was the only reason for that suggestion. But staff right now is listening and hopefully bringing you resources that will help inform. So.
Well, I just thought that having a follow-up, because we're going to give them a lot of the information, and then to back and say, okay, now digest this and give us an answer is asking a lot, I think.
Yep. We saw that when the first 2 times we presented this to the whole committee, it was too much information, and asking for an immediate reaction is challenging, and it puts everyone in a difficult position. So
I think I saw Beth's hand come up. I don't know if that was accidental.
Go
My
ahead, Beth.
technical difficulty, thank you. I'm fine.
Okay. Kathy, your hand's up.
I already showed my lack of technical skills, sorry.
Okay, it's 6:57. We don't need to hang out longer than 7 if we want, even though we started late because of things. We are happy to reach out to Roslyn and Metro and invite them back. It sounds like we don't necessarily need to ask Dan Blue or anybody to come back and talk with us unless we are going to have a further conversation with the subcommittee. Would you agree with that? Or do we want to see if we can ask somebody that was on that subcommittee to on that technical work group or whatever they called it?
Well, Dan might have the same problem. He can't take
Yeah.
a stance or.
What's Rosalind's last name?
Green.
Oh yeah, I have that in my notes somewhere else. Okay.
Okay, so, and then I would, recommend that you guys be prepared to give a debrief and overview of your thoughts and try to couch it in the regional waste plan, because that's where we need to keep the conversation, not the future, which I have struggled doing too. And then if the committee is comfortable asking staff to do work to draft findings that can be considered, we can do that work at your direction.
What's the date, the next one? The 9th or something?
9th.
Night.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll make sure.
Okay.
materials,
Well, thank you. Go ahead.
materials will be posted on this, hopefully on the 2nd, a week before the agenda.
And the materials are going to be pretty light, probably. We're
It's
not going
an
to really have a
agenda.
staff report, an agenda, and Metro presentation.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sandra,
Thank you
anything
all.
else from you? I see you're unmuted, or you're good?
No, it's hard for me to mute on these little.
Okay.
Things.
Okay.
Really
thank you.
appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Thank you. See you all later.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Kathy, you have